This episode is brought to you by Cobury Digital. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur Rush. Today, we're going to be talking about email marketing and why it will still be great in 2021. We'll also briefly be talking about how you ensure that happens, how you sort of tap into the potential that is email marketing, because we know a lot of our listeners are struggling with it and that are sort of feeling that email is dying out or that it's no longer the sort of greatest marketing platform. Now, the thing is, email is great. Email is continuing to grow. Email has so many advantages, and there's so many things you can do in email that you can't do with advertising. And so if you're considering, dropping your email marketing or not getting started there because you personally don't like email, you're making a huge mistake. Now, Thomas, could you introduce just a little bit briefly about email and why it's going to be great in 2021 still?
Yeah, I think email has always been great and will continue to be great, even past 2021, right? Let's start with three things: reach, consistency, reliability. All these social media platforms that are all hyped up today, right? They're massive, right? Facebook has 2.5 billion active users. Instagram has 1 billion active users. All these other platforms also ton of users. Email has 3.9 billion users, 3.9 active email users. And on top of that, consistency. 95% of people check their email daily. And that's not even counting all the people, who check it multiple times a day and every time they get an email. I mean, most of us feel sick when we have a notification that's unread on email. You can't say the same thing for Facebook. People are not on there as much. They're not on there as actively, and they're not always checking their notifications. They're not always going to see your ad, which brings me to kind of another point on this reach. Getting your ad in front of someone, you could be getting your ad out to 20,000 people or something on Facebook, but the right people won't necessarily see it. If you send out an email to someone, there's a very, very good chance that they're going to see it. Now, the last point, reliability, is also really important. Facebook, Instagram, everyone, right, has an algorithm that they're constantly changing. And, regulations come along or societal changes come along, and all of a sudden, they restrict you from doing certain things. I mean, just now with the coronavirus, right, Google and Facebook restricted advertising for products such as hand sanitizers and face masks. And now this didn't just affect people trying to take advantage of the crisis. This also affected people who, had always been selling hand sanitizers. Now, email doesn't function the same way. You're going to be able to send out that email regardless of whether, emails change, regardless of whether, someone decides to change the advertising policy. So really, reach, consistency, reliability, that's what's great about emails.
Absolutely love it. And I couldn't agree more. I think there's two things I'd like to just briefly, elaborate on here. So while, of course, on Facebook, you have the ability to segment, you have the ability to reach a lot of people, you actually have people that are very active on social media, there is sort of one thing that you don't have, and that's the same element of permission. Because people that sign up for your newsletter, they're saying, I would like to hear from you. Now, if you run ads, you know that a lot of people on Facebook do not want to hear from you. And so this is a major difference in how you can approach it and the sort of value you can provide, as you have a customer has already said, tell me more. And all you have to do is simply tell that customer more in the right way, provide value, and he'll commit. On Facebook, it's different, right? You have to sort of convince people that, you can provide them something. They have to gain an interest in you. And it's sort of a much longer process. It's a much longer funnel. It costs a lot more money. And that's sort of it's a completely different beast to deal with. Whereas, on Facebook, and I know you'll touch upon this a bit later, Thomas, it's on email, not on Facebook. It's a lot easier to grow it. You can do it sort of organically. You can take advantage of customers you already have. You can take advantage of people that are already visiting your website. And so it's just a much cheaper thing to work with. And so I think that's sort of the main reasons, right, why email marketing is interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just much more intimate than an ad on Facebook, right? An ad on Facebook, I'm not the only recipient. But with emails, what you can do is, send it out to John. And then when John sees that email, it's an email sent to him personally.
Absolutely. I think another reason that email marketing will continue to be great, and in fact probably be even more interesting in the future, is because of marketing automation, right? We're all talking about automating, being more efficient, taking advantage of data. Well, sure, you can do this on a lot of platforms, most certainly Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn as well. But the thing about email is it's made it so easy. It doesn't require that much data. What you can do is, as you touched upon just very briefly, right, Thomas, you can say, hello, John, because if they've registered with John, you can write a simple piece of code and now John is, being segmented. Additionally, you can look at which products have these people been purchasing before and sort of set them into automation flows based off of that. So if you know they bought a bike and, it's for their 2-year-old kid and they can't fit that bike at 4, well, you can set up an automated email that will follow up. If you're selling them meal boxes the last 2 weeks, well, 2 weeks and a day later, you're selling them a great sale to continue, right? So there's so many automation opportunities that are really simple, and it goes far beyond that. You can use it to provide value, right? Someone just purchased a product. You can now automate a series that introduces how to use that product, how to make the most of it. Someone just signed up for your newsletter. You can send them a welcome series that makes sure they get to know everything they need about your brand. If it's someone's birthday, you can say, happy birthday, Jacob. Hope you have a great day. Here's a little gift for you. So with marketing automation, you can sort of just completely boost your ROAS. You can limit the amount of work you have to do. You can make sure you hit the right people at the right time. And all you have to do is set it up correctly once, which isn't very difficult. And you'll be able to kick ass in 2020, 2021, and beyond.
Yeah, marketing automations are really a game changer when it comes to email, because you can do a lot of what you mentioned on Facebook and Instagram as well, right? You can say, look, I want to target people whose birthdays in this month. I want to target people who have been on my website, abandoned their cart, didn't purchase. I can target them with a dynamic ad afterwards. But what you cannot do, right, is have 100% consistency, right? If someone goes to your website, enters their email in the cart thing, and in certain countries, of course, enters their email and then abandons the cart, you can send an email out. And there's a very, very good chance that that person is going to see it. But as soon as you try to do this on Facebook, maybe the pixel wasn't tracking this person because they were using Safari or some kind of tracking blocker. Maybe, they're not on Facebook that day. Maybe they're not on Facebook the next week. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of places where it can go wrong, where you can't remind this person of, the cart they forgot to finish.
Totally agree. And there's more to it than that, right? Because at the same time, you can't guarantee these people will even see those ads. What if they did not go on Facebook on their birthday? They suddenly didn't see the ad. At the same time, for some of our smaller advertisers, you aren't guaranteed that you have the audience size to even pull this off, right? If not enough people are visiting a specific product, well, you can't run that remarketing ad. You're probably forced to run a remarketing on all of your traffic, etc. So really, like, email marketing is just a much safer, much more stable way of achieving it. You ensure people see it. You don't need the same audience size. It's easier to set up, and it's free.
And on this topic of audience size, which will kind of, lead into the next topic, is, not just if it's too small, you can't advertise, but if it's too big, you're not going to get the frequency you need. If it's, if 20,000 people have visited your website, the amount of money it would cost for you to show everyone your ad, the 3-4 times that's required for them to really have actually seen it and not have just accidentally scrolled by or missed it in the side of the screen, that's going to be too expensive. But emails, it doesn't cost much more to scale it. Obviously, there's some fees involved with certain programs and so on, but the fee to scale is not even near to what you pay on Facebook, which is a relatively cheap site. And this allows you to get the massive ROAS you need, because little expenses, but a much, much higher conversion rate.
Absolutely. And in just a second, let's move away from marketing automation and talk about that ROAS. Why is it so much cheaper with the newsletter? Why is it that much easier to scale? And how can you do it? But just briefly, a final point I want to emphasize about this marketing automation. It's true that on Facebook, right, you can target people, you can segment, you can still make individual customer journeys. But understanding your customer is a lot more difficult because it's a larger audience, whereas on, email marketing, it's a specific person. You can look up John, you can target his email, you can see when did he open, how did he open, you can send him specifically an email. It's just much easier for you to follow him along his journey and make sure you nurse him so that he gets the help and that he gets the sort of information flow that he needs. Anyway, Thomas, let's move away from marketing automation and get on to ROAS, right? And why it's cheap and what you can do with email marketing.
Yeah, exactly. So like I just was talking about, it's super cheap. You have these programs that charge a bit, but are at the end of the day, much cheaper than any other platform, than advertising on Facebook, which, is relatively cheap. And on top of that, you're in control, right? If you start scaling to a certain point where these platforms are too expensive, you just automate it yourself, and suddenly, you're not paying a fee for extra subscribers, but just for the program, for the design developer to actually develop that system. And so the potential to scale is massive. And if you're not scaling, it's still really cheap. On top of that, the profits you're making off of it are high because of what you talked about, because you can single in on this person and move them down the funnel with much more accuracy than you can on Facebook. You're able to have a much higher conversion rate, to really bring them through the customer journey and convert much more frequently. And, even once after they've converted, you're able to get them to convert again and again and again. And that's something that's much more difficult to do with Facebook and Instagram.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting because we're talking a lot about, email, Facebook, and Instagram as if they're competing. I think the beauty of it is they work so amazingly well together. I absolutely think that Facebook and Instagram provides a ton of potential that email can't match. But what the thing about it is, with Facebook, Instagram, and other like advertising platforms, you send a ton of relevant traffic to your website, but a lot of the visitors aren't ready to commit for a full purchase. What you can do is sell them on a soft conversion, have them sign up for your newsletter, and that way, the platforms aren't competing, you're simply improving the prior platform. And so I think that's a really interesting aspect of how email marketing can sort of be a supplement to your existing advertising, sort of make sure that although the ROAS at the time in your ad might not be great, over time, maybe that's worth it because of the lifetime value. Additionally, I think it's worth understanding that, email might cost a bit of money. There are expenses, but we have platforms such as MailChimp and other of the more basic ones in which for smaller companies, up until I think it's around 2,500 now, they keep moving the limits, you can send them emails for free. We even have some even simpler platforms where you can get up to around 10, 15,000 subscribers. So, depending on your needs, depending on the automation that you need, as a small business, you might even be able to do it for free. And as you said, Thomas, if you're a slightly bigger business, well, the cost is so low compared to running ads. And it doesn't really scale progressively the same way. Anyway, so newsletters are cheap. They consistently provide higher ROASs. They have a lot of automation opportunities. But the main point, the main reason that email will continue to be relevant in 2021 is the ability to segment perfectly. And this has nothing to do with Facebook and Instagram because you can largely do the same there. My point here is that a lot of people are not having success with their emails because they're treating them as this platform where you have a large audience and you send them one email and everyone gets the same email. And that's not going to work. That hasn't worked for 2020. It's not going to work for 2021. It's definitely not going to work in the future where people expect even more from marketing. They expect everything to be even more relevant. No, instead, what you want to do is you want to segment every single newsletter. You want to make sure that you don't run a sale to someone that just purchased your product. You want to make sure that you don't send a welcome series to someone that's been a customer for a long time. You want to make sure that you build retention with customers that have already purchased. All of these things, right? You don't want to send your vegan newsletters to people that don't want vegan products. You don't want to send dresses to men unless they're into that. You really want to consider how you segment, and you really want to take advantage of the simple tools that emails have. Another thing that I love to do is, looking at, did people already open my last newsletter? If they didn't, well, then maybe you can justify sending a follow-up newsletter. But if they opened the last newsletter, if they showed an interest, well, maybe you should follow up with remarketing on Facebook, trying to convince them of the sale, not bump them with another newsletter. So newsletters are all about segmentation and providing value. If you provide value, people will open your newsletter, they will click, they will purchase, it'll be cheap, you'll get a high ROAS, and there's so much opportunity. But if you use it as I have 10,000, email signups, I'm just going to dump it to all of them, it won't do very well, and a lot of them will unsubscribe. And finally, on this note, I recommend that segmentation goes beyond just tracking behavior past signing up. I recommend that you have several journeys in which people can sign up. So if you have a product, let them tell you a bit about themselves. Let them tell you what they want from your newsletter. Do they want sales? Are they, beginners? Are they more advanced? And that way you can tailor the welcome flow and all of your ongoing emails based on this sort of audience that you created.
Yeah, Emil, I totally agree, right? In advertising in general, right? What you want to do is show people stuff that's relevant to them, right? You want to target your ads well, the equivalent of segmentation here with newsletters. And that brings us back to the point you were talking about earlier. There's no competition between email marketing and Facebook marketing, or, marketing on social media in general, especially because email marketing is basically free, right? You don't have to choose, where do I spend my budget? Do I put 20K into Facebook and 20K into newsletters, or do I put all of it into Facebook or all of it into newsletters? That's not a decision you have to make. Keep in mind, the budget, sure, goes for social media, but you should still put time and effort into creating a good email system, because it's not dead, right? Let's find some of the main takeaways we had before, right? The reach, the consistency, the reliability of email is just amazing, even if you don't compare it to other social media platforms. You can reach a ton of people, they'll see it consistently, and it's not going away. There's no threat of tomorrow it's gone, I have to plan something else. You can invest into making your email great because it'll be there tomorrow. And obviously, I'm not talking about a decade in the future, but for the next couple years, email is definitely here to stay. We haven't developed any new technologies that will make that obsolete. You have so much power here. You can really automate everything you need to automate so that people get the right newsletters at the right time. And that goes hand in hand with segmentation, right? You make the right automations and you make sure that the right people get them. And all this, will get you a much higher ROAS than any other paid form of advertising.
Yeah, totally. And you make sure that you segment it right, and this is going to work continuously. I think a final point I want to add on, just a little bit of bonus information for everyone. The closest we have to a more futuristic approach, and it's really not anywhere near where we're going to be in a few years, right, is SMS marketing, just text marketing. And this is something that works amazingly well, not against, but together with email, because the same lead form you use to gather emails, nowadays I would always have it ask for their phone number, unless you have, a specific reason not to. But that way, again, they're not competing. It's a win-win. You have one lead form, and when they fill it out, you get the double up. So yeah, email marketing is fantastic. And although there will be competition, although there will be newer ways of achieving the same thing, it's not there yet. And it's just a fantastic place to be.
And bonus piece of information number 2, we've had another episode about the digital customer journey, right? And we talked about all the different touch points that someone needs to get in order to convert, right? You need to be in touch with the customer, 11 times on average, and then they convert. Email, SMS, ads on Facebook, organic posts on Facebook, that all has to play together. You have 11 touch points. They should be on different platforms. Use those in unison to really get them to the end.
All right, everyone, and that's it for today's episode. You really want to be top of mind, always, everywhere, at the right time, with the right message. If you do, you'll convert. And with everything we've given you today, we hope to see you back on email marketing, signing up people, getting those leads out there, and building your business. And now's the time to share and subscribe.